Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends, and this, our 38th podcast in the series. It's great to have you joining us once again for another set of conversations. As we head to the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, and hopefully with the end, or at least with a diminished impact of the coronavirus, I think it is time to start thinking ahead. What life is going to look like in a post-COVID world, and how the changes and modifications that we've made along the way are going to impact our future. What things are we going to hang on to, and which ones are we going to cast aside? It's going to be interesting to find out. So I thought today it might be fun to have a couple of conversations that deal with planning for the future, especially as music teachers, and dealing with your school administration and perhaps Board of Education. First up, my best friend in the world, my teacher, my confidant, my brother, and a regular on Band Talk, Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser. Tim and I spend a few minutes in a stream of consciousness and chat about life and what may be ahead for all of us. Then we'll shift to a conversation with Rick Coulter. Rick is a retired music teacher and arts administrator from Pennsylvania. I met Rick while at Vandercook College of Music and found him to always have some great thoughts on things we in the profession can do to really advocate for music programs. Rick retired in 2014 as Supervisor of Art, Dance, Drama, Music, and Gifted Education for the Williamsport, Pennsylvania School District. I know you're going to find our conversation interesting. So that's what's in store for episode 38 of Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. We'll be right back.
This is Drew with thepodcastingstore.com, your one-stop shop for everything podcasting and remote learning, and a proud sponsor of Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Listen to what we've been working on in this clip from our podcast. Whether you're making YouTube videos or teaching a remote class, you know you have great content, but what if the equipment you are using is getting in the way of your message? We've all been on the video conferences with the person using the built-in camera and microphone on their computer. You know how hard it is to pay attention to someone who looks so shadowy and sounds so garbled. You're wondering if you're on a work call or watching testimony from someone in witness protection. It does not have to be this way. What if you could have the fantastic video and great sound you crave without going to film school or taking the hit to your wallet that you're dreading? What am I talking about? The wireless microphone system. Sounds complicated, right? Well, it's not. I have personally tested the setup I am recommending, so I know it will work for you. So what system am I talking about? The one that I tested is the Galaxy GTV wireless system. It packs a big punch and seamless. To hear the rest of this podcast, please visit thepodcastingstore.com, your one-stop shop for everything podcasting and remote learning. This is Drew with thepodcastingstore.com. Now back to Charlie.
Well, it's always great to have the opportunity to check in with my old buddy, my old pal, my teacher, my best friend, Dr. Tim. So welcome back to the podcast, Dr. Tim.
Thank you, and thanks for asking me to do this again. I look forward. We'll get it right one of these times, don't you think?
I think one of these times. It's been too long. I'm telling you, man, it's been too long. I don't know about you, but I've been traveling all around the world right from this back of this desk here. How about you? You've been traveling all around the world from the back of your desk too?
Well, yeah, and you can get to all around the world with just a punch of a key too. So it makes it easy, right? You don't have
the cool thing is that the airlines have not lost one of my suitcases during this pandemic.
Amen.
You've never had that problem, have you?
No, that's never happened.
or the airport shuttle has had no problems picking us up.
No, all that is absolutely seamless.
Well, talking about that, I mean, we've had some good news in the last couple of days. We got good news that the vaccine's getting close. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's always, and of course the pandemic is at its worst, but the vaccine's getting close, and it's what they say, it's always darkest before the dawn. Mm-hmm. So I think we're starting to look ahead now that maybe school might get back into session. I'm sure some places are still face-to-face, but it's going to go back into session, but it's not going to happen immediately. It's going to take some time to do that. And teachers, I think, really need to start thinking ahead about what they need to start doing in terms of communication with all of their constituencies to get ready to get back to that some sense of the new normalcy.
There's no question about that, because we're not just going to flip a switch. Let's be honest. We have to make up for all the time that the rock rolled back down the hill, right? Put it back together, the pieces of Humpty Dumpty, for sure.
Yeah. And so how do teachers prepare themselves mentally, I guess? Any ideas? Because it's when they get back on the podium with those kids, it's not going to be the same group that they had a year ago, February.
Well, no, and a year of experiences has gone by for those students as well as the teacher themselves. I mean, there's different filters up there. Well, I'm just curious, what would you do? Because you're always ahead of the game. What would you do?
Well, I'd be going right back to the basics. I mean, there would be a lot of basic work, and if we were started to play as an ensemble, we'd be playing things that would be a bit easier than they were when we were together, and I'd have to ease back in. I would hope that I guess if I were back this spring, I'd be using that time to get them to the point where they start feeling comfortable towards the end of the school year, because we'll probably start next fall wide open. It'll be back just the way I think it kind of was. So I think the basics, don't you?
Well, yeah, and there's no question, and maybe come back a couple notches in expectations of musical delivery at the given time. So you would spend time building the culture and getting them back into that sense of they're part of the organization.
Yeah, right. I sure would. And I would start, talking to parents, and I'd be talking to my administrators, and I'd be talking to my music dealer and all those people, and kind of let them know where it's headed. Yeah.
And what do you think is going to happen to beginners? Curious.
This interview just flipped. You know that. You're good at that, Tim. You're
good ideas.
Say what now? What was that question again?
Beginners. I know that's a big thing for everybody. You're going to handle what would you do?
Well, I mean, if we were back to school in the spring, I would, and I didn't start beginners in the fall because of the pandemic. I might think about a spring start to beginners. A lot of schools have done that, and maybe do some sort of limited summer activity with them. To kind of bring them in on a camp basis. There's a lot of schools that do a summer camp, and boy, it's really, really effective. The thing is, I mean, it's some teachers will do it because they're under contract. Some teachers won't do it because they're not under contract. And, and speaking of contracts, I mean, that's another thing that we got to make sure that we start communicating with administrators, because budgets are going to be all over the map because of the pandemic. The tax base is going to be way, way down.
Yeah.
So they got to start talking to their administrators too, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're back to our friend, aren't we? Communication.
Yep.
Everybody's going, I'm really going to need to up the communication with the parents and the administrators and my colleagues and so on. It's like, yeah, let's ramp it up and keep it there when we get back, so that we open those highways of, exchange all the time, not just because of this, but use this as an advantage to it.
Yeah, and they send one email and they may not get a response, and so they take it as they don't care, they don't like me, they don't do that. Instead of going like taking the opinion that, hey, this guy's busy, the email got lost in the shuffle, I'm going to put it back to the top of his desk. I'm going to go like, hey, I sent you this a couple of weeks ago. I know you've been really busy, probably haven't gotten time to it, but is there anything I can do to help facilitate this? I mean, we have to make sure that our point gets across, right?
Well, the reason they show the same commercial over and over and over and over is because they know people aren't going to get it the first time. I mean, I'm sure you have commercials memorized by now.
Oh, Jake, I want that Rogers rate. Oh, Flo, right?
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. And people, well, you know this, you play this game better than anybody. They'll go, well, I sent that to the administrator, or I sent out 50 of these, and two parents they thought it was stupid. Well, you're going to let 2 out of 50 flip, so like that.
Yeah, I always think it's important, and this is, I think, where people fall short. I'm sure I'm one of them too, but I think it's important that you always determine what the goal is in this situation. There's a goal there. What do you really want to get done? What's the bottom line? What's the end of this thing? And don't let something along the way deter you. Don't let it take you away from the goal. Right? I mean, so sometimes something will happen. They won't answer your email. They'll give you another one. And you got to keep coming back and focusing on that goal. You got to keep bringing them back to what you want. And sometimes there's a bunch of hurdles that you have to jump through. Trying to get some service done on a project at the house. And I sent the guy an email a month ago and nothing happened. And so I waited a couple of weeks. I called the guy. Nothing happened. No response. Well, I want this project done. So I called the guy again and I said, hey, I sent you an email. I left you a phone call, left you a phone message. I said, obviously, one of two things, maybe hopefully you're not sick with the COVID, or the other thing is that, maybe you're too busy. You don't have time to do this. You don't want to do this. Just let me know and it's okay. And I'll find somebody else to do it. Right. But because I want to get to the goal. Right? I'm just not going to assume that it's not going to get done. So we got to keep bringing them back to that.
Well, I mean, it's a form of marketing, regardless of what we say. And good marketers go, well, only got this much response on this one. Let me, recalibrate that a little bit and go at it again. But the important thing is they don't give up or give in.
Yeah. If you don't like the response, use a different stimulus.
Exactly. Well, you don't, plant a different seed if you don't like what's growing.
Yeah. Let's change the topic here a little bit. We got the Midwest Clinic, virtual Midwest Clinic coming up in a couple of weeks. Now, and you've been on the Midwest board for how long? About 10 years?
About 10 years, yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You've been a great addition to the board, by the way. You've done a lot of wonderful things there. I trust that it's a 3-day event. You instituted this high school leadership workshop. Is that on hold for this year because of the virtual nature of it?
Yeah, that's going to be a marked time for this year because, well, I mean, it was your idea. The idea of going back and taking highlights from all the recorded things over 25 years. My gosh. And so everybody jumped on that, took credit for it.
That's okay. You know what? I was talking with Richard Crane, the president of the Midwest Clinic, and he was talking about, what are we going to do? And I said, well, you've got all of these years that there was a period of time that Mark Records was recording all these concerts. Mm-hmm. I said, go back to those archives and pull some of those out. And it's great. So I'm glad they're doing that. But one of the highlights over the last few years at Midwest, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years, is you've always conducted an interview with a big name person. You did Frank Battisti last year. You did the lady composer, help me out with her name.
Oh, Julie Giroux.
Yeah, Julie Giroux last year. You've done Bob Reynolds. You've done Colonel Gabriel. You did Dr. Bejan when he was alive. Obviously, you wouldn't have done Dr. Bejan when he's dead. That would have been a very difficult interview to do, Tim. But so who you got this year? You got anybody that you're going to interview this year?
Yeah, I did Omar Thomas, the young composer that's now, I think he's at University of Texas. Man, whew. I mean, he's young. Like he's, in my mind, he's young, and he's knocking it out of the park. He's the latest, greatest, hottest thing going. So, and he was great. He was great in the interview. He's brilliant. So, yeah.
So what should we expect to hear? What can you, any secrets?
He'll take some left turns. It's certainly not going to be in the vein that Mr. Battisti was. It's not going to be in that vein. It's not going to be. It's new and shiny and different and bells and whistles, and yeah, it's good.
So looking back, everyone's been kind of unique, haven't they? There's not been one that's been more special than others. And you can think back and go like, this was really great.
I think that what brought them together, Charlie, was their commitment and dedication was vivid. And again, not right or wrong, but where they were, the landscape of their lives was vivid. I mean, they were at it wide open. And that was reflected in everything they said. I mean, just really connected. And they're always humble. That's what continues to get me. Very humble about it. And then credit was always given to everybody around them. And, it wasn't me. I was surrounded with the best people, and my students were, and boy, just great people, great hearts and souls, besides being great musicians and brilliant, yeah.
That's a recurring theme among the great ones, isn't it? They always give it away. They always defer.
They're always teaching.
Yeah, they're always, well, that's right.
Your dad was always telling, right?
Except, they say one person doesn't make a difference. And we all know different, because as soon as those people leave their positions, things change all of a sudden, bam,
I think that's the only thing that does make a difference, is that one person. Because the notes are the same on every page. The fingerings are the same. And come on, you wrote Essential Elements. You didn't change fingerings just for that book. That stuff's the same. The horns are made out of metal, but all that stuff's the same. It's the person up front.
Yeah. Happens in band, happens in coaching, happens in the business world. It happens everywhere, doesn't it? That one person.
Yeah.
And so there's just the one interview this year. And I guess somebody else is doing one with Wynton Marsalis.
They're doing like a showcase interview with him. Yeah. And that'll be great. I mean, he's remarkable. He says more good by accident than most of us do by intent. Plus, again, he's got the right heart.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
He's sure a success. So this is going to view on December 16, 17, and 18. And of course, it'll be available just those 3 days, or do you have any idea? Are they going to make it available past those days?
Yeah, they're going to record it, and you can go back, which is another pretty hip thing about it, if you want to be honest, because, you and I, we run around at Midwest and trying to get to as many things as we can, and upset because two things are the same. We want to go to both. Well, now you can see it all, which is an advantage. Wow. And plus you can go back and study it if you want to. Some of those things go by so fast so there's another advantage. Yeah.
So there'll be clinics. Will there be special clinics as well as part of this? Little mini clinics, I trust. Little shorter things. That's great. The only thing that won't be is the line at Starbucks there at the McCormick Place, right?
You knew the back door to that one, right?
Oh man! And no cab rides to downtown Chicago for overpriced food.
Well, I mean, I think that's the reason a lot of people went. It was a reunion.
Absolutely.
And so that part, you have to create it virtually as well as you can. But the learning part, well, again, it's just one highlight after another. There's no, I'm going to wait 2 hours and go to this concert. I mean, here comes another one, bang, right in your face. So, yeah.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. So what's next for Dr. Tim?
I don't know. I'm like you. It's like whatever comes up, that's what's next. In this setting, to try to set any kind of blueprint that's, and to say in July 20th, I'm going to, we don't know where we're going to be in July 20th. So I think we're just, hanging on for dear life.
Any state conventions or anything, any meetings that that are coming back that are live?
No, I know some are waiting to see, and they're kind of hoping, but they're also ready to pivot on virtual.
Yeah.
Which is where everybody is right now.
Everybody's there. Well, Dr. Tim, thanks for checking in, man. And always great to jabber with you.
Always the best. I love you, pal.
I love you too, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Bobo.
Man, I always love chatting with Dr. Tim. What a great spirit and what a great philosophy he has. I always come away energized and upbeat. What a gift he is to all of us in music education. Dr. Tim, thanks for being my brother. You are the best. We'll be right back with my conversation with Rick Coulter.
Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and Friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band. Advantage Network Percussion, where you only get the advantage if you're part of the network. ThePodcastingStore.com, your one-stop shop for the finest in podcasting and virtual learning gear. And Vandercook College of Music, home of the Mecca Continuing Education Program, where you'll find an online class for your every need.
Well, during this COVID time, and now that we start seeing maybe a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with a vaccine, and hopefully things are going to start getting back to normal, and hopefully by the fall of 2021, schools and classes and things will be as normal as they can be given everything, and we'll be back to face-to-face instruction. I thought it was really important that we shed some light on maybe an aspect of teaching out of the band room and things that dealing with how are we going to protect our program and what kind of things do we have to do. And I went through my database of who would be good people to bring on to do this. And one name just jumped out, and he's a guy that seems like I've known forever. He's really active as an arts advocate, a clinician. He's been teaching some classes at this. I know he's taught some online classes at Vandercook that have gotten really high reviews. He was in Williamsport, Pennsylvania as the music program chairman for 246 years. And they were always recognized as one of the 100 best communities for music education in America. He's my good buddy, Rick Coulter. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Charlie. Great to be here.
Yeah, it does seem like I've known you my entire professional life, and I don't really remember where in the hell we met. Was it probably at Duquesne? Were you there for one of those Mid-East band festivals or something way back when?
We might have passed it at Mid-East back in the day, but I think we crossed paths in 2004 when Ruth Rhodes brought me in to do a summer session at Vandercook.
I'll be darned. Well, it just seems like I've known you forever, and they've been good times, and you always bring a positive attitude and a great insight into some things. So, but what we don't know about you is where you grew up and how you got involved in music. So tell us a little bit about that.
I was lucky enough to be in Pittsburgh in the late 60s, early 70s, when the Pittsburgh public schools and urban education in general had great music programs across the country. You think about the programs in Detroit, St. Louis, across the country, and there was concern about the arts in the public schools. So Pittsburgh had a guy named Stanley Levin, and elementary, middle school. I started off as a violinist, and broke my arm in an automobile accident. And the following year, picked up the trumpet, and a year later, I was doing well enough. My parents got me trumpet lessons with Anthony Pasquarelli, a gentleman known as the boss to all of us affectionately. And he was my trumpet teacher from the time I was in 6th grade to the time I finished grad school at Carnegie Mellon. So it was elementary and middle school, had some great folks along the way. Jack Purcell at middle school. And then I got to the Carrick High School in the city of Pittsburgh. And, it was a typical urban school district. We didn't have what a lot of the suburban schools had, but we had a lot of great things going on because Bruce provided those opportunities for both our concert band, our jazz band. I had a small orchestra, did musicals, and we were one of the more happening places in the city of Pittsburgh. And I had opportunities because of the setup, that all city opportunities. We didn't have PMEA activities, which I knew nothing about, do know now. But I was part of the elementary all-city orchestra from the time I was in 6th grade through 8th grade, all-city orchestra, senior high school orchestra throughout high school, all-city band, and some great opportunities.
When you were a kid, did you ever hang out at Volkwine's music store?
Oh,
that was the place, wasn't it?
It was, Nuncy. Did you ever order music through Nuncy?
No, I knew about Nuncy though through a mutual friend, L.J. Hancock, who was at Norwin High School for so many years. And they had that band, the Italian Politico band or whatever it was.
Yeah, that Henry Mancini used to play in.
I'll be darned.
back in way before my time in Pittsburgh, but Nuncy knew. That was down in Aliquippa, I believe.
Yeah.
Down along the Ohio River.
So what was your high school band like?
30 or 40 kids. We would do parades in town. Maybe play grade 4 music, not necessarily the finest performance as you compared to some of the suburban stuff, but it instilled a real love of music in me and my friends. It was a safe place for us to be. If you and I are the same age. Remember, the end of the 60s, early 70s were a tumultuous time here in our country.
Yes,
and my high school had a number of we had a lot of problems being an urban school in the United States at the time. So the band room was a safe place, and we were lucky enough to do a number of great things, including jazz ensembles and musicals, which was unusual for many of my friends in the city.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So when was that time that you said, okay, I want to be a music teacher?
Probably, well, I had a huge conflict between whether I was going to grow up to be a physicist or become a music teacher and just go to music school. And it was early in my senior year that I was accepted at Carnegie Mellon as a physics major. And my trumpet teacher at the same time says, Rick, you got to buy yourself a C trumpet in order to get any good at this. And at the time I was playing gigs because this was a time of rock bands. You were probably a rock band player back then too, because everybody needed horn players. Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Tower of Power. So I was doing that on the side, doing some church work as a senior in high school. That's why I needed my C trumpet. And then I sort of had to make a decision. I was accepted at CMU with both a physics and a music major, and I decided one day to do the music degree.
So you went to Carnegie Mellon. Was Richard Strange the director of bands then?
For 3 years. What a glorious time that was. An incredible experience because Dr. Strange was just a wonderful conductor and teacher.
Yeah, he was brilliant. He was just a brilliant guy. So that had a unique program at Carnegie Mellon, as I understand. It was a 5-year program. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, 5 years to get a music education degree. And you weren't invited to be part of music ed until your sophomore year. You'd had to have a very successful freshman year. And so they believed that you had to be a good musician in order to be a good music teacher. Who'd have thunk it?
What a novel concept.
So after 4 years, you had a degree in performance. So it's like all the other performance major programs across the country. You did that. You did some music ed activities along the way. So you were often juggling both parts of the program. In your 5th year, you did your student teaching, and we did the student teaching for the entire year, both the fall and spring semesters, in addition to working on graduate classes. And then you went away to get some practical experience. And after you had a year plus of practical experience, you were allowed to come back and finish your master's degree in the summer program.
So where did you student teach?
I student taught in a city public school in Brookline. I did the elementary classroom there. And then I went to Bethel Park, which was for my secondary experiences in band mostly, but also choir, studying with some really wonderful, wonderful people. Dean Streeter was the gentleman. Dave Aliseski were the band program there. Just incredible stalwarts of music ed, well respected throughout Pennsylvania. And they were just a great foundation from which to build my career as a band and orchestra director.
So you get your degree, you got your master's in hand, and then you end up somehow in New Jersey. How'd you get to New Jersey?
Like everybody who's graduating thinking they're never going to get a job, what am I going to do? I'd taken a trip to Colorado, got back and was looking for jobs. And there in New Jersey was Watchung Hills Regional High School. They were looking for a band director. I applied, got an invitation. So I drove out to New Jersey and this was the week before Labor Day, Memorial Day, week before Memorial Day. and had a very successful interview. They says, Rick, we really like you, but we have to see you teach first. I says, well, I'm here. I'll stay an extra day. I'll teach. And they says, well, you can't do that because the band director has to rehearse the band for the parade on Monday. So you're going to have to come back. So I drove all the way back to Pittsburgh, which is somewhere around 300 plus miles, and came back the following week and directed a band rehearsal. That's what it took to get the job. And a week later, I had the job as the director of bands and orchestra at Watchung Hills Regional High School.
So when did arts administration sneak its ugly head into your band directing career?
Well, I think it's always been, it's part of my belief that you're always an administrator, whether you're a one-person shop or you're the head of a 150 teacher program in a major school district, you are always an administrator. And in the 4 years I was at Watchung Hills, I was able to develop a band was well thought of. Our jazz band in particular received a lot of attention because it was either highly rated or won all the contests we were in. And two things happened. One, a principal said, Rick, you should become an administrator. And a band parent of our program who had a kid, was a drummer in our jazz ensemble, said, Rick, we've got an opening in Somerville, New Jersey. How would you like to apply to be our fine arts supervisor and high school band director? So 5 years out of college, I went to Somerville, New Jersey, and became their supervisor of fine arts and high school band director. And I did that for 6 years. And that was the beginning of my administration degree. And I juggled being the band director at the same time.
And then you moved to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where you stayed, 30 years or so?
I did work in Bridgewater, New Jersey there for a while. And from Bridgewater, I was over there at a conference, and a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ken Ressler, who was the head of music ed for Williamsport. I don't know if you know Ken, but he was dean of music at Texas Christian for many years.
President of MENC for a while too, wasn't he? He did a sprint at that.
I don't think he did that, but he was nationally known and a great guy. Just a superior educator and administrator. Mm-hmm. Which is how we went from running a high school program, a K through 12 program, to being head of the dean of music at Texas Christian. That's a huge jump, and reflects just his great level of skill. So Ken says, my job is open because I'm going to Texas, and if you're interested, apply. And I did, and applied for two reasons. One, my high school marching band had competed against Watchung Hills. My high school marching band had competed against Williamsport any number of times, and I just knew the high quality of what they did there. I says, wow. And Williamsport's always had a great reputation. So I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get the position. And I stayed there for 25 years, first as a supervisor of music. And those were the best years. When I had just music to do, but eventually, as with many administrative jobs today, you become in charge of not only music, but fine arts, and eventually all curriculum areas K through 12.
Now, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So you're serving as music supervisor. What did you aspire to do for your district and your teachers and your kids in that role?
I've always looked at administration, and actually teaching in general, as a service position. My job is to serve the people that I'm working with. So my goal in Williamsport and all of the other places was to provide the time, materials, and structure to build a successful K through 12 music program. And the belief was to build it from the bottom up. The most important part of what we all did, and this is from the top down, the high school directors and middle school directors felt that our general music program, K through 8, was the foundation from which we built everything. So we asked that we develop good musical skills, singing, rhythm, understanding of how to do everything music in K through 8. So when we begin instrumental music in grade 4, grade 3 for strings, kids knew how to move, how to count, had a basic understanding of music, and we continue to build that through our general music program K through 8, and starting our instrumental program at upper elementary into high school.
So every job that we have had its share of frustrations, right? So as a supervisor of music, what were your biggest frustrations?
My biggest frustration was when I just couldn't figure out a way to get some of the folks to work together. Because again, in our belief, where the better you work together in this bottom-up system, the better off we're all going to be. So that meant that sometimes people at the upper level would have to support by teaching at the elementary and middle level. And there were some folks who just thought that they were in their own little lovely silo, and they weren't always open to working and meeting with and strategizing how we could do a better job of building the program from the bottom up. That was one of my biggest frustrations.
Yeah, I always talk to people and say, it's up in the elementary school and it's down in the universities and colleges, and the illusion that that's the top is really just a reflection, because I say, you know what, we get what's left over. And so if you don't do a good job in the elementary schools, they're not there for you in the middle schools. And if you don't do a good job in the middle schools, they're not there for you in the high schools. So yeah, those young teachers, those teachers that are teaching those elementary kids, they're really important. We got to do everything we can to support them. That's for darn sure. Yeah. So Rick, we've been dealing with COVID-19 since late February. I'm sick and tired of talking about it. I'm sure you are too. Early March, and hopefully the vaccine's on its way, and maybe we can get back to education as somewhat normal for the fall of 2021. But, as you look ahead, and with your experience as a program head, running a program, guiding, looking out, trying to develop a vision for a program, what are your biggest fears? What are the issues that teachers need to be prepared to face?
I'm afraid that in too many districts where people haven't done the groundwork that's necessary administratively, that upper administration will not take them seriously enough and provide them a seat at the table. Because if you don't have a seat at the table, you're often on the menu. So we've got to get folks to be more engaged in collecting data and being able to have the facts and the figures to prove that they provide extra value for the school district, and that the return on investment is more than what is the fact for any other program in the district. And for a long time, I felt that was a huge part of our success, that we could provide significant value and prove through data that our actions and the investment that the district made in us provided a higher return on investment than any other program in the district. That included sports and academics.
So you mentioned groundwork. What is that groundwork? Is that just developing the data?
That's basically collecting the data, being able to organize the data so it's readily accessible and understandable, and then politics. And I know a lot of folks don't like that to think that we were involved in a political realm, but everything we do, the way I've approached it, is political. And what does that mean? In the best of terms, it means that you have to have strong relationships. You have to have relationships with the right people, and you have to develop relationships with people who can make a difference in what you're trying to do. To fuss and whine and moan at someone who can't make a difference for you is a waste of time. So you've got to recognize who are the movers and shakers in your world, and that can make a difference and help you, and who can you help? Because it's a two-way street. And the more that you help, the more you serve other people, the more you serve your fellow teachers in all academic areas, your principals, your administrators, your superintendents. The most important person to succeed in a school district is your superintendent. That's where the top down comes is really, really important. If you can help your district look like a shining star because of the outstanding fine and performing arts program you've got, you're someone who deserves more attention from your superintendent and your school board. And those are the folks who provide the time, money, and people, the resources that make a difference in education.
Yeah, Illinois lost a guy this year, a Senator, Art Berman. He was the education senator. I knew him. He's a grand old man. I said, he was a state senator for 30 years. And I said, Senator Berman, I said, how did you ever get to be a state senator for 30 years? And he had this little smile and he laughed and he said, Charlie, he said, it was simple. He said, I campaigned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 31 years, right? Meaning that you're always campaigning. And I think the same is true with advocacy, isn't it? I mean, advocacy is a 24/7, 365 proposition. But if teachers haven't been advocating for their programs up to this point, is there anything they can do now?
Especially right now, teachers need to find out what they've gained or lost through this COVID experience. And it's probably going to be loss. School districts across the country are losing students. If you started with 10,000 students at the beginning of the year on your rosters, a lot of districts have lost 10, 15% of their students to online instruction, or they've left to go to private schools. The first thing all teachers need to do is find out, where are they? Have they lost students and principals, superintendents are really concerned about this, because it's important to remember that every kid who walks in the door has a big sack of money attached to them. And that's how schools are run. So it might be $7,000, $10,000, $12,000, depending on the kind of reimbursement your school district has from the state that pays the majority of the fees in most states. So it's the goal of every superintendent to attract and keep as many of those students as they have. And there's no better recruiter of students to stay in the school district, not just the music program, but the school district, than fine and performing arts programs. So if I don't know of an outstanding school district that doesn't have a fine and performing arts program. We're one of the biggest attractors, getting kids and especially their parents. We have a really great relationship here in Williamsport with our realtors. And we happen to be an urban school district with a high population of minorities and a large population of kids who are on free and reduced lunch. And being an urban school district, that's a concern for some people. Or should I go to the nice, more pleasant suburban district next door, or should I really? What is it that's special about Williamsport that makes it so that the parents will buy a home where we have higher taxes, because we have a police force, we have a fire department. Nobody else has those things. They have volunteers. We have higher taxes. Why should I spend higher taxes in this urban district? And one of the big answers, quite frankly, is the music program. And the legislature, I think, well, at one point, over half the folks on the city council had kids in our music program, and they understand the value of it. The business community spends a lot of time touting the great things that our music program does, and also visual arts and drama and dance. We were fortunate for an urban school district to have all of the above. And most of the districts around us, which are smaller, don't have those kind of resources, nor have they committed long-term over many, many years to have that kind of successful program we've got in Williamsport.
So you mentioned making your music program, your fine arts program, a crown jewel of the district a little bit ago. So how best can teachers keep their administrators informed about their programs, especially during this time? And are there any special tricks that you've learned along the way that might help teachers educate their administration about the importance of music and the arts?
One, I think it's really important to plan at least 2 WOW events every year. And that's a time when you invite parents in the community into your schools to say, at the highest level, this is what we do. And in our case, we have the 2 best WOW events. We've got more than just these. we have a holiday concert, which we put over the internet. And it features the band, orchestra, and choirs at the high school. It's about 450 kids on stage, on and off during the course of the event. And we pack the house every Christmas. In fact, Williamsport has been recording theirs before we shut down the schools recently. And it will be broadcast. We can't do it live this year. We've been doing that for, I think, 30 years. The other WOW event we do our all district concerts, where you bring elementary, middle school, and high school students, and parents can get to see how the elementary kids sound after only 6 months of instruction, how they develop into that's the beginning band. Then we have elementary bands, honors elementary bands, the middle school bands play, and then the high school plays. And there's in a course of only an hour, because this event should only last about an hour and 10 minutes. Parents can see how their sons and daughters will someday be part of that millionaire band, millionaire strolling strings, millionaire choirs. And I say millionaire because that's our school mascot, and part of our selling point here, as we market ourselves, is that we are the millionaires. We're proud of it, just like you might be a Mustang or whatever else you might be. So millionaires are part of all of our names, and we want kids to grow up to be part of the Marching Millionaires marching band, the Strolling Strings, Millionaire Strolling Strings, and that's part of the WOW event, and we think that's number one. That's important. Two, we have presence on the internet. Today, you have to have a large presence on the internet, and we do annual reports, printing data and stuff like that that's out there. Three, we try to reach out to the community. When I was running the program, we'd have every military band that's ever on the road that's going to come through the Northeast. They all knew that they had a standing invitation to come here and perform with us, perform in our high school. So we had the Navy, Air Force, Army, Marines, every major group that the service bands had out of DC, we've had at our high school probably more than once.
So you had to ask the question: How did the school get the mascot millionaire? How did that come about?
Oh, that came about in the late 1800s. Williamsport was the lumber capital of the nation, if not the world. If you wanted a big mast for a ship out of England, or they were building Baltimore and Washington D.C. at the time, we're on the Susquehanna River, and the lumber capital of the country. There were a lot of folks here in town who were making huge amounts of money back in the day. And so we had more millionaires per capita than any place else in the country. And for some reason or another, that moniker stuck. And we're one of two high schools in the country. The other one down in West Virginia, same type of story, Southern West Virginia, where coal and lumber became the mascot for the city.
That's great. So looking back over your career, and especially those early years when you were just teaching band and orchestra back in New Jersey, anything you'd have done differently?
I wouldn't have been in such a hurry, because I was really having such a great time, and I just was running too fast to really fully enjoy it, and not always building a deeper level of relationship with my kids. I'd known about service. I'd been in some great clinics with a guy named Tim Lotzenheiser, who would help shape my philosophy. Well, I first ran into Tim, I think, in 1976 or 77, when I went to Westchester for their marching band clinics that they were doing back. Jim Wells and his group at Westchester, and so if anything, I needed to spend more time developing those relationships with my kids. And the community in general. We did well, but looking back, I would do even more.
So I know you've been very active teaching online education classes for several colleges, and Vandercook being one of them. You mentioned that's how we first got introduced. So if I enroll in one of Rick Coulter's online classes, what should I expect?
I think the bottom line of the class is I try to teach the other half of the job. Many of those areas that just don't get addressed in undergrad education. Things like data. I've mentioned data. It's the core of what's helped me be able to prove the value of our program to administrators, community, and parents. Data, budgets. I mean, how do you deal with budgeting? Where does this money come from? And why am I worthy of asking for money? And should I ask for money? A lot of folks feel that, well, if they'll give me the money that they think I need, not realizing it's really not that at all. Is you need to go out and ask for the money, because if you don't, you'll never get it. The major thing I've learned about money is there's always enough money in the budget for everything that you need. The question is whether or not you're worthy enough to get it. So, high school band director comes to me and says, Rick, I want six con silver sousaphones for the marching band. And back then, I remember it was $36,000. And how are you going to find $36,000 for something like sousaphones? And what we did, we bought them over 2 years. We figured out how to make that happen. And we convinced the administration that what we had was no longer viable. But it was through the relationships and my having proved over time through our experiences and the support we received that what I was asking for was real, and they made room in the budget for it. And that goes for many other things. One of the things we talk about is how do you ask for $1 million? And I know you've done this in your building project at Vandercook when you were there. You're trying to get a new performance space in buildings. So we needed a new auditorium in Williamsport. So you have to go about in a very structured way, figuring out how to ask for, in this case, $1.2 million to fix the high school auditorium, because the high school auditorium was broken. If you can break an auditorium, I mean, my second year in Williamsport, we had the President's Own Marine Band in a concert there. And it was the most disappointing concert of my life. Not because the Marine Band didn't play incredibly well. It's because no one could really hear it because of the poor acoustics in the place. So that was an impetus. From there, it took 14 years to finally find the right time and the right place to find that $1.2 million.
Yeah, it takes time. I want to get back to data for a second. When we talk about data and you talk about data, hopefully we're talking more than just the number of students enrolled or the number of trumpet players. Hopefully there's also some data to support the musical learning that's going on. What kind of things did you do along those lines?
Well, in addition to enrollment, and we looked at enrollment in every way you could, including percentages. Percentages are really, really important. Boys, girls, especially when thinking about choirs, you needed to think about all of that. Your curriculum needs to have some specific goals. So how do you reach those goals? Be they scales, being they musical accomplishments. At the high school level, it's important to collect some awards along the way. For instance, this year our Strolling Strings are supposed to be at Midwest. That's not going to happen. Performances at PMEA or MENC events. How many students in your curriculum are performing at X level? We have a number of guidelines that we would ask people to reach during the curriculum. In fact, that's one of the problems right now with COVID is if you don't know what you're measuring, if you don't have points along the way that you're trying to get your students to reach, you don't know what you've lost academically. And that's a really important thing to be able to prove that, and it's why you need to justify more time, more resources during this age of COVID. This is not a time to back away from asking. In fact, it's a time to ask for more, because you, like every other academic area, has probably lost progress. There are other things that you want to measure. You want to measure the financial return on investment you bring the district. Something that too many folks will ignore is the huge amount of money that parents invest in a music program. This saved our tail one year when we collected all of the financial information that the parents contributed to our program. And we discovered that the district, for every $2 that the district spent, and at that point it was about $2 million a year, the cost of district to have a music program, of what we did with faculty, curriculum, busing, everything. The community spent $1 million, and they spent $1 million through all of the instruments they bought, private lessons, supporting the marching band, all the busing. Marching band parents paid for most of the busing for away events. So we were able to specifically dollar for dollar, nickel for nickel, prove that return on investments. We challenged the board. What other program in the district what other program in the district is there where the parents put up $1 for every $2 that the district puts up? Doesn't happen in sports programs.
Right.
Doesn't happen in academic programs. And that return on investment made a huge difference when a group of people were trying to cut our program.
That's an interesting thing that I have, I guess I thought about, but I just never thought about it in that light, is that, the amount of money that parents invest in order to have their kids participate in a band program, and to calculate that up. That's really, really cool. So Rick, are you still an active music maker? You still playing?
I'm playing and conducting. Two things I'm proudest of are the brass band that I started 20 years ago. And I'd played in a brass band in high school and in college. We had the tuba instructor and well-known brass band teacher, Philip Catlinet. Vaughn Williams wrote his tuba concerto with Phil in mind. And I was lucky enough to have him as a brass band teacher in college. And Phil used to write those contest pieces that are so well known in Great Britain for the contests. And the symphony here in town needed a group that could play outside without a tent for a big event at the local country club. And the string and woodwind players were concerned about playing outside without a tent. And they said, "We're sorry, we just can't do this." And brass players, being what we are, knowing that we'd play almost anywhere for anything. And they asked me, says, "Rick, can you put together a brass band?" So my friends in Pittsburgh, who were involved with a number of groups, including the River City Brass Band, Paul Gerlach gave me a whole collection of music that I put together for a concert on the practice green of the local country club. And it was a huge success. Brass band music is one of the funnest things I've ever discovered in my musical career. I mean, I love conducting full symphony orchestras and bands, but brass bands are like driving a brass sports car. And I've never driven a Corvette, but I have driven a Porsche, and it was like driving a Porsche. There's speed, there's beauty, and you can make an awful lot happen with a really skilled brass band. And we've got some incredible brass players here in this area. So I was able to put that together. We've been active for 20 years until this year, when we lost our concert series over the summer. And normally this week we would be playing a Christmas concert someplace. The other thing, I've done Tuba Christmas for 30 some years, which is, we just posted 2 years ago. We did our 30th anniversary. We posted that this week. I'm active on the Williamsport Symphony's board, and whenever they need a fourth trumpet or someone to play something extra someplace, I often will take my horn out to play with them. And I'm active in a number of boards here in town that promote the arts.
That's great. And
often I think it's just not band and orchestra. It's really all the arts, because there are folks who don't happen to be actively involved in band and orchestra, but choirs, visual arts, dance, all of those need to be supported. So just the whole concept of the fine and performing arts are supported throughout your community.
Yeah, well, being in Williamsport, I mean, There's a lot of art there. One of the arts that everybody knows about in the world is the art of baseball, right? And the Little League World Series. You ever been to the Little League World Series in Williamsport? And what's that like?
The population of our town doubles. Little League baseball is the purest form of baseball, in my opinion. I grew up in Pittsburgh. Roberto Clemente, Dick Grote, all of those folks in Pittsburgh where they won the World Series back when I was a kid. Been to Forbes Field, would get on the streetcar and for 25 cents on the streetcar and 25 cents to get into the far right field. Did that as a kid when I was growing up in Pittsburgh. So now in Williamsport, every year Little League baseball comes. It's free, by the way. The world needs to know that Little League baseball is free. You just show up, and you just get an incredible experience. And some nights, the bigger nights, there are 40,000 people sitting in the stands and up on that hill that you see, just enjoying. It's an August evening. It's 75 degrees. And you're watching these kids from all over the world just have the times of their life. So I can't say enough things. And if you're out there and want to come to Williamsport, call me, email me. My information's available, and we'll make sure that I'll give you some pointers as to how to have a great Little League baseball experience.
Oh, that would be fun. Okay, one last question. Looking back over your career, what's the greatest lesson you ever learned from one of your students?
It's just not students, but staff that I'm working with. This goes for everybody you're dealing with in an administrative or teaching position. And it's that you never know what's going on in the rest of the student's life, or a teacher's life. You just don't know what's going on or why they might have made a decision, why they're so quiet today. And it's important to recognize that I can play a very important role in helping them have a safe place to play, to be in school, to teach, because often it happens where teaching in school is the safest place for a teacher. It's where they're happiest. It's where they're valued most. It's where they get the most satisfaction, because who knows what they're, raising kids, being married, being part of a home is not always the easiest situation. So when you recognize, and that goes for staff and students and administrators, and we all have bad days and we all have good days. But if you're having a bad day, really think about what might be going on behind those eyes as you look at them and they say something that's inappropriate or they act inappropriately. And if you pay a little bit more attention, you might be able to just offer some consoling, some guidance that really helps these folks. But you have to listen and watch really attentively. And those are two skills that I've tried to develop over the years to just become much more aware of the communication that's coming from the folks I work with.
Rick Coulter, you are one of the great people in the world, man, and you do so much for our profession. Keep advocating for us. Keep giving us a little guidance and a little nudge once in a while. And I can't wait for this COVID thing to pass, and we'll get together and shake your hand, give you a big hug, and thank you for being on the podcast. Buddy, take care of yourself.
Thanks, Charlie. It's a real honor to be here, and my best to everybody in your audience.
Rick Coulter's practical advice is something teachers need to add to their bag of tricks. His approach is simple and direct. Just get your ducks in a row, gather your data, keep your program visible, and make sure the decision makers in your district get the information in their hands. It's a continuous, daily commitment that keeps the arts and music at the forefront of what is important in your school and community. Rick Coulter, you're a good one. Well, that's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. We'll be back with more great conversations. And until then, this is your host, Charlie Mangini, saying, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and Friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.